Hello, it is Ryan, and I was on a flight the other day playing one of my favorite social spin slot games on ChumbaCasino.com. I looked over at the person sitting next to me, and you know what they were doing? They were also playing Chumba Casino. Everybody's loving having fun with it. Chumba Casino is home to hundreds of casino-style games that you can play for free anytime, anywhere. So sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com to claim your free welcome bonus. That's ChumbaCasino.com and live the Chumba life.
Sponsored by Chumba Casino.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
On this episode of Booked on Rock, he was offered a deal with Apple Records, toured with John Lee Hooker, recorded an unreleased masterpiece at RCA Studios in Hollywood, had a very psychedelic Thanksgiving dinner with Mike Nesmith of the Monkees. All of these incredible stories and more with musician and author Barry Greenfield.
We're totally booked.
Rock and roll!
Well, I think I'll leave you to your reading.
Little Hand says it's time to rock and roll.
Rock and roller!
We are totally booked.
Welcome back to Booked on Rock. I'm Eric Senich. This episode's guest is Barry Greenfield. He's the author of My Journey to Blue Sky. Barry, thank you so much for being here.
It's a pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.
Let's start with your love of music. You write in the book, quote, St. Thomas Aquinas, a renowned Italian philosopher from the Kingdom of Sicily, 1225 to 1274, explained that there is a first cause or prime mover that is the origin of everything. I discovered my first cause in music in 1963 while listening to a transistor radio in our Salisbury kitchen. Take us back to that moment and its importance.
When you live in Salisbury, Rhodesia, and it's 1962, you get no rock and roll. You get white country music, Eddie Arnold, Patsy Cline, the Andrews Sisters. But every Saturday from 12:30 to 1, 12:30 noon to 1, there was a 1-hour gift, a rock and roll show in Rhodesia. And the last song they played on that half-hour segment was always the number one song on the BBC. And I would stay glued to my radio every Saturday, drinking in the energy of that new music. And then one day, it must have been in the early part of the year, Please Please Me was number one. And like so many millions on the planet, when the Beatles hit, it's unimaginable to someone your age to imagine the landing of that. And when it landed, it just changed me. And it's all I sort of thought about the next 5 decades. I know that Billy Joel and I know that Springsteen would probably echo that because there was a certain je ne sais quoi that those four lads brought to the table that was new.
Good timing that I'm wearing my Beatles shirt today.
Thank
I
you.
decided to wear that for this, but yeah, so many, Billy Joel, Springsteen, so many will tell you it's either hearing a Beatles song on the radio or seeing them on Ed Sullivan in February of, 64?
February the 9th, 1964, they were on Ed Sullivan.
Yeah.
And I wasn't here. I was living in Durban, South Africa at that time. So I didn't really have a visual connection with the Beatles. Mine was all oral. I didn't really see them or understand what they looked like until I saw A Hard Day's Night.
Before we get into the stories from the book, tell us about your career as a musician.
Well, I guess I should begin by saying, whenever I get asked that question, I always qualify it by saying I'm not really a musician, I'm a songwriter, because that's where my head is. I listen to these Beatles songs, and luckily, a few flights up from me in a high-rise in Durban, there was a gentleman who was in a band called the Deans, and his name was Colin Horowitz, and he played rhythm guitar. And I went and bought a guitar. My family gave me the $15 I needed, and I didn't have a clue. I'm very, very unmusical, Eric. I had trouble tuning. I had trouble working out chords. Hence, I became a songwriter, inventing my own music. But he taught me the chords to early songs like For Your Love and I Love Her. And that led to me learning songs, which I never was satisfied with. So I started writing my own songs. And then I won the battle with my parents to leave apartheid and come to Canada at 16. It took a year of solid negotiating and debating, saying we have to get out of this place. It's not right. And we came to Canada, and that's when the world exploded. And the number one song that week in Canada when I got off the plane was Kind of a Drag by the Buckinghams. From there on, I just got more and more into working. I believe that you have to work. There's a great line in Inglourious Bastards, where Brad Pitt says to the other fella, how do you get to Carnegie Hall? Well, you practice. And I work at what I do.
Your song New York is Closed Tonight became a cult favorite and solidified your reputation as a poetic voice in Canadian music. What inspired the song and the lyrics to that?
I was in a basement of a friend, Harvey, his basement in Kitsilano, a hippie area in Vancouver in 1968. I was 17. And I always played guitar for these guys. That's what I did. I was the guy who played the guitar. So I was going through a magazine and I saw a full page ad. It was a Life magazine, and it was a full page ad of a light bulb. And that's all it was. And underneath the light bulb, it read, New York is closed tonight. And it was, I believe, not certain, but I believe it was about conserving energy, but I'm not sure. But I know there's a songwriter, and you can read, as you do, many books by other authors. They find songs in the air, and I found this one, on a page, New York is closed tonight. So I wrote 13 verses, and it took me an hour, and it was about pollution in New York. And my bass player was also the journalist at the biggest newspaper in Vancouver, the regular newspaper. And he interviewed Bo Diddley, and Bo Diddley was playing in Vancouver, and Bo Diddley, he asked him if he listened to this tune, New York is closed tonight, that Barry had demoed. Bo Diddley loved it and took it to New York and gave it to a guy called Fred Allert, Ahlert Jr., who was Burt Bacharach and Hal David's publisher. And he phoned me up, and after 6 months of saying no, I said yes, and I recorded the song begrudgingly. And it's one of those songs that has legs. And I got an email yesterday from a gentleman I've never met who said he can't believe that I live in Vancouver still. This has always been his favorite song. And that happens many times, not many times, but a few times a year.
How great is that, though?
It's unbelievable, Jared, because it's all I want. I don't want fame. I don't want fame. I just want to write songs and be able to share them. And here I am still doing concerts, still selling out, and still writing. I mean, I wrote new songs this week. I mean, I don't quite, when I'm dead and gone and I look back from up there, maybe I'll understand it, but I just love writing.
Yeah, just that creative release. That's what you need. And then if it connects with others, hey, that's even better.
Yeah, and I was very lucky that I always attracted the top. Like when you're working with Bacharach and David's publisher, and he's your manager, it's an easier route because they have connections. All you do is sit back and say, okay, or no, whichever one you want to say, and it opens doors. So in my 50 years of flogging songs and trying to get myself noticed, I've always had small s success, but never big S success. And so what?
I think George Harrison said, fame and money can ruin creativity.
Yeah.
And I think what he means by that is, of course, once you get into that stage where the record label's expecting you to come up with a hit, expecting you to look a certain way, there's a lot of pressure, and it can take away from the creative vision that you have.
Especially if you allow it to.
If you allow it to, exactly.
Yeah.
Because I'm watching the Grateful Dead documentary, finally, after all these years, what a long, strange trip it's been. And when they were recording their albums, they would say to Warner Brothers, take it or leave it. This is what we want to do. And they would say, I don't know, what can we do with this? There's no single. Hey, we stand our ground on that, but that's easier said than done.
I saw the Dead with Garcia 20, 25 times. And that is an inspiration to how to create. It's not about trying to write a hit. I've never tried to write a hit. I've never tried to write a radio song. It's trying to write something that satisfies what you feel about a subject. And Graham Nash said that a successful song is when you write a song that the listener thinks is about them, relates to. And that's always my goal. One of my new songs is called Invisible Baggage. And it's about an AA meeting or an NA meeting or a cancer meeting, about people in the round room sitting on hard chairs. And I've never been to any of those meetings, but I wanted people that had been to those meetings to feel that I nailed it. And I haven't shared the song yet, but that's my goal always, is to write something that is felt. The person who does that extremely well is Paul Simon, with songs like Homeward Bound. Everybody understands the loneliness of the road, and American Tune, and Something So Right is a genius song. But he takes a long time to do it. They're not like the vomit songs like Nowhere Man and songs that come out quickly. Some songs are like Da Vinci's. They take a long time to paint.
What's behind the book title, My Journey to Blue Sky?
I've done 11 albums, but the only one we really talk about is the one I did in 73 in Los Angeles, which is called Blue Sky. So my name is Greenfield, so I had an epiphany in a Holiday Inn, Greenfield Blue Sky. RCA liked it. But to me, the book title is about my year. From the book starts when I'm 13 and ends when I'm 74. And basically, I'm on, what's that line you just used for the Grateful Dead?
What a long, strange trip it's been.
Okay, well, what a long, strange, beautiful trip it's been, because it's always surprising. I'm not attached to money or fame, so I don't get disappointed. And Blue Sky is nirvana. Blue Sky is joy. Blue Sky is playing with your grandchildren. Blue Sky is kissing your wife. Blue Sky is enjoying that spaghetti meal. Blue Sky is driving on the open road in the outback. You know, it's wherever makes you feel connected to what you are, what you seek. And Blue Sky, you're always seeking it. So my journey to Blue Sky.
Booked on Rock Podcast. We'll be back after this.
When? Oh, patience, my dear, patience. Remember, absence makes the heart grow fonder.
Ryan Seacrest here. When you have a busy schedule, it's important to maximize your downtime. One of the best ways to do that is by going to ChumbaCasino.com. Chumba Casino has all your favorite social casino games like spin slots, bingo, and solitaire that you can play for free for a chance to redeem some serious prizes. So hop on to ChumbaCasino.com now and live the Chumba life. Sponsored by Chumba Casino.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
There are 5 acts, you say, who stood atop Everest for you in terms of your development. So I want to talk about each just briefly, what it is that inspires you about these particular bands. The Kinks is one. Yeah, start with the Kinks.
The Kinks because of the volume and because of the lyric, and because of Ray Davies' understanding of the English culture. He was unique. Ray Davies is one of the best. The Hollies because of Graham Nash and his phenomenal harmonies and pop ditties. Look Through Any Window. It's just a marvelous song written by my really good friend, Graham Gouldman. The Beatles because of the work ethic. George Harrison, to me, is the outstanding Beatle. George Harrison, to me, is the human Beatle. John Lennon is Da Vinci. He's an alien. He's so uniquely talented. It's phenomenal. The top of the hill, standing on the shoulder of giants, as is McCartney. Ringo is a very, very solid drummer and never got tired. Bob Dylan, because Bob Dylan is the best. He writes words that we all wish we could. There's one I've left out, and it's definitely not the song.
Let's see. Dylan, the Hollies, the Beatles, the Who, and the Kinks.
Pete Townsend.
Right.
The best line from Pete Townsend was, "We were 3 geniuses and a lead singer." And there you go.
He's a brilliant songwriter, too.
Oh, just like Ray Davies and Pete Townsend, are like 2 ends of bookends. They're brilliant, they're knowledgeable, they're calm, they're articulate, they're not ego. Ego is, when Quincy Jones wrote on the studio entrance for We Are the World, "Leave your egos at the door." I've produced a lot of records. And what a common thread is, after about an hour or 2 hours, maybe 3 hours of listening to these bands coming through these really expensive speakers, they start comparing themselves. Oh, this sounds like The Who. Oh, this sounds like the Beatles. Oh, this sounds like U2. But it don't. It sounds like them. And you can get your ego is so easily fed in this business. You know, when I get notes about blue sky, I still get notes every year about my wife was dying of cancer and blue sky helped. I get all those kind of priceless things, but it's never really about me. It's about the song. And I was given the song. I write hard songs, but the great songs sort of come to you, like Van Morrison says, or Michael Jackson said. They sort of channel through you, and they come very easily.
Bob Dylan's interesting in that he doesn't want to reveal what these songs are about, which leads to so much speculation, so many books written about him, classes where people study his lyrics. As an artist, do you prefer that way, or are you okay with telling people this is what the song is about?
Absolutely the second one. I'm a storyteller. After every song I do in concert, I talk about it. That's how this book came about. People would leave concerts and they'd say to me, "Oh, I just love your music, but the stories, man, you know, they unending because they come from the heart." And storytelling, you know, it gives people comfort, you know, sitting around the campfire, watch Apocalyptica, the Mel Gibson movie, how the wise owl is telling the story to the troops, you know. Storytelling is kind of what you do in this podcast. You allow people to storytell and you guide it. You're like the guy in the back of the motorboat with the rudder. You're the rudder guy, and I'm the guy paddling.
I always find with these, every single interview I do, I always, at least this is how I feel, it starts off good and just gets better as it goes along because you become more and more comfortable with that guest or I don't know. I always start off a little stiff and then all of a sudden just loosened up by the end. And I almost wish I could start the interview midway through and when I'm feeling loose, but maybe people don't pick up on that. That's your own internal analyzation of your craft, right?
I think that nails it. First of all, I've watched a lot of your interviews, so I've never noticed that. But also, you know, when you leave the station, the train goes slowly and then it goes faster until it gets to speed. And if it started off fast, it wouldn't make sense. So you go on a flight and you're flying from New York to LA and it's 5 hours and you sit down next to this person and you don't say nothing. And then 3 minutes later, you say, "Where are you flying to?" And then an hour later, you're deep into conversation that you wouldn't get very often anywhere else. That doesn't happen in a plane or a train or an airport, where you know it's a very short thing. And if you're smart enough not to try and exchange emails and just keep that 2 hours, 3 hours as a gem, what you learned, that's what these interviews are like. But with you, it's a little bit different from me because I've been connecting to you for a few weeks, especially the last few days. I watched all of the one you did with the music publishers last night. That helps me. So I don't feel like I'm starting with a stop with you, Eric.
Yeah, isn't that interesting? But that's each individual person and their creation. I think we are a little too hard on ourselves. And that's what makes it difficult to share it with everybody. But there's also a part of me that you probably have as well. There's also a part of it like, yeah, to hell with it. You know, this is what I do. I'm going to put this out and let's just see what happens. Because otherwise you'll never put it out and you'll never share it with anybody if you get too, not insecure, but you second guess yourself too much. Just put it out there and share it because you're only human. You're not perfect.
Yeah, and see where it lands. But also what you and I have in common and people that take risk is courage. Now, when you walk into the fire, when you write a book, you know, when you write this book, it took courage to be honest and there's flaws in the book. I'm not perfect. And that's what makes it a readable book because you know the dude is expressing himself honestly. I had journals. I spoke to people that were there when I could, that's still alive. And I remember the things vividly, even though the famous people don't remember. I know that I spent 3 hours with Harry Nilsson, but if Harry Nilsson was here today, he'd say, "I don't remember that."
But you remember it. I'm going to ask you about that story too. That's one of the many stories. Let's get into some of these great stories. At 17, you traveled from Vancouver to London. Did you grow up in Vancouver? I'm trying to remember.
I'm a road rat. I was born in Manchester, and at age 7, my father transplanted the family into Rhodesia, which became Zimbabwe. At 12, I had analysts horribilis, whatever the right phrase is. Worst year ever. I was beaten and beaten, beaten. So I said to my parents at 12, I'm going to go live in England with my aunt.
That's in the book. Yep.
Yeah, I flew over to England by myself, which was phenomenally scary. I got lost in Orly Airport. It was a very scary moment.
Talk about courage.
Yeah, and I've always had it. And it was I don't know how my parents let me. They're not alive today, so I can't ask them. And then I spent 2.5 years in Manchester, and that's when this Hollies, Kinks, Who thing happened. And that's what I did was they became my family because my mom and my sister and my father were 9,000 miles away. It's not like it is today where you can Skype and you can text. You were alone. And I cried a lot, but I had music for solace. And I don't only listen to music, Eric, I studied the music. And I realized that my generation and All Day and All of the Night were energetically difficult to get to. Like safe bands like the Searchers or the Mersey Beats or Cilla Black were okay, but not for me. But when you go to the risk bands, the ones that go Fade Away, the Who, they took the F word and took a chance. When you go to the Kinks, who talk about Dead End Street, when you go to Dylan, who is like even the president of the United States has to stand naked sometimes. Like these are things that made me realize, hey, songwriting is not about can I dance with you, honey, or marry me, or I love you, or your eyes make me sing. It's about the street. And as Neil Young so wisely said, I'd rather walk in the gutter than in the middle of the road. And what he means by the gutter is go to places like Ray Davies went with Lola. I was listening to Rockin' in the Free World by Neil Young a few days ago. It's not only the lyric that's right, it's the guitar that's right. And people criticize Neil Young for not being a great guitar player. He's a great
yeah, I disagree with those who say that. Yeah.
He's great, and he kicks ass. And you can listen to my records till you're blue in the face, Eric. You'll have no idea what I'm like live. Live, I'm nothing like that. I'm much more like people that go on the edge with their music. Townsend comes to mind. AC/DC comes to mind. Petty is a phenomenal American talent. Phenomenal, as is Lindsey Buckingham. Lindsey Buckingham on stage is all that Fleetwood Mac are, apart from the drummer and the bass player. Stevie Nicks is fluff, but Lindsey Buckingham is killer guitar.
Absolutely. Highly underrated.
Yeah, it's his personality, his ego is so huge. He's not much of a sharer. He's more of a look at me kind of guy.
Yeah, and he wants to be in charge from all.
Yeah, and you get more when you share. You get more when you listen. You get more, even if they're not as good as you, if they're 10% of the pie, it's still better than your pie. I really believe in collaboration. I'm a huge fan of that. People that are better than me, people that are as good as me, people that aren't as good as me, all work well.
Booked on Rock Podcast. We'll be back after this.
The future is now!
Hello, it is Ryan, and I was on a flight the other day playing one of my favorite social spin slot games on ChumbaCasino.com. I looked over at the person sitting next to me, and you know what they were doing? They were also playing Chumba Casino. Everybody's loving having fun with it. Chumba Casino is home to hundreds of casino-style games that you can play for free anytime, anywhere. So sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com to claim your free welcome bonus. That's ChumbaCasino.com and live the Chumba life.
Sponsored by Chumba Casino. No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
So going back, you're 17 years old. You traveled from Vancouver to London to play your music for John Lennon. This is 1968. What you were offered was not what you expected. Share this story and the decision you made and how you feel about it all these years later.
Okay, watching TV, I remember the day, but it was May 1968, probably about the 14th or the 12th. You can look it up in Wikipedia. John Lennon and Paul McCartney flew to New York, and they did the Tonight Show to pitch Apple Records. So they walk out through the curtains, and lo and behold, Johnny Carson's not there. Joe Garagiola, a baseball catcher, and a drunk Tula Banquet are waiting for John and Paul. And I've since read that they were very, very disappointed at that, and that they had every right to be. And that's almost disrespectful to have an act that size and not have Johnny there. So the interview was 22 minutes long, two 11-minute segments, and it was pretty banal, stupid questions like, how are you going to follow Sergeant Pepper? But when John was allowed to speak, because he did most of the speaking, he said, listen, we're here because we're opening a company called Apple. We want you to come from all over the world, that was his phrase. Bring your songs, bring your poems, bring your plays. There'll be no one there with suits to meet you. Come to Apple and we'll be here to listen to your music, listen to your poems, listen to your plays. So I had $800 in the bank, which was my first year university money. I was still in grade 12. And the courage thing overwhelmed. And I don't think it's arrogance. I think it's just, I don't think I felt I was going to be accepted. I thought, why not? So I bought a ticket and I flew over to England almost days later and got off the plane. It was 3 p.m. I walked to Apple Records, which was Apple Music, which was 3 Savile Row. I looked at the door. I went back to my 8-pound a night bed sit and I slept, got up the next morning, and at 10 o'clock the following morning, I walked into Apple. And there was up the stairs, just like you see in the film, and up the stairs inside, and there was this enormous rundown British office building with this ginormous oak desk at the top of the stairs. And behind this oak desk was a young girl my age. I was 17, so I'm sure she was about that. She said, hello, can I help you? And I said, yes, I'm Barry Greenfield. I've flown from Canada because John invited me on the Tonight Show. And she had no idea what I was talking about. So she said, you have an appointment? And I said, no. And she said, well, have a seat. So I sat down there and I waited maybe 20 minutes. And in that 20 minutes, John and Yoko walked up the stairs, and John was dressed identical to the Hey Jude album cover with the black hat and the black clothes. Yoko was dressed in white. And I said the same thing to John that the murdering Chapman said, good morning, Mr. Lennon. And he said to me, hello. And then she didn't smile. She just kept on walking. And they went into Alan Klein's office and they started smoking Galois cigarettes, which nearly choked me, and talking. And then out from the back comes Derek Taylor. And Derek Taylor was the Beatles' publicist. And he bent down on a knee, and I'm sitting in it. They had 2 church pews. They weren't really benches, they were church pews. And he said, can I help you? And I said, told him the same story. He said, well, John's kind of busy. Can you play them for me? He said, do you have a cassette to leave for John? And I said, no, I've never recorded these songs. I've never played these songs for anybody. And I think he thought it was kind of funny. And I guess he was thinking, is this guy weird, or he seems nice? So we walked through Apple, and it was winding halls, all empty offices, nothing there yet. The picture, Magritte picture, was still on the floor, hadn't been hung yet. And we go to an office, and I played Derek 10 songs, and he said, the F word, these are incredible. You're incredible. Come back at 10 o'clock tomorrow. So I came back 10 o'clock tomorrow, and John and Derek said, we're going to do 2 of these songs we've picked with this new girl and Loves for Young and Old, and we're going to take you to EMI, and you're going to demo them. So I thanked them both, went off to EMI, sat on a stool, and the guy who produced the session was Larry Page from Larry Page Records, who also managed the Kinks. He was tough, and he just said, do it again and again and again. And I did the 2 songs, and then I left. I came back the next day, and John said he wanted to release them as a single. And I said, excuse me? And John said, we're going to do these 2 songs as a single. We're going to do Love is for the Young and Old as the A side with This New Girl as the B side. And I said, well, who's going to sing them? And he said, well, you're going to sing them. You sing them great. And I said, no, I'm not singing them. I don't want to sing them. He said, oh. So I went away, and I walked the streets of London, and I thought about it and thought about it. I phoned my mom. My mom didn't take a stand. She said, do whatever you want, Barry. And I didn't go back to Apple because I was scared to. I went back to Ardmore and Beechwood to Chris Webb, who was the publisher, who I'd met the day earlier, who set up the EMI thing. And I told him the truth, that I wasn't ready. I could hardly tune my guitar. I'd never played in public. I'd never signed for anyone but my sister. It's ridiculous. It's not what I came for. I came to sell my songs so that people on Apple could sing them. And Chris Webb looked at me, not really bewildered, but kind of surprised. And he said, I understand. And the last question you asked me, how do I feel about it today?
Yeah, how do you feel about that decision all these years later?
the right decision. Absolutely. 100%. Man, Mary Hopkin, I don't want to be Mary Hopkin. Jackie Lomax, who? Badfinger, 2 suicides. I sent in an email to you what Liberty DeVito said. It's a terrible business. You've got to be strong. I mean, I'm in the business. I do it all the time. I'm talking to you. You got to be strong. And I was a kid. It was like they should have said, go away for a year, write some more songs, come back in 3 months. They should have thought what they were looking at, a guy who couldn't tune his guitar.
Yeah, you were just hoping that they would take the songs, use those songs.
I want the same today. I've had about 25 covers. I've had 3 movies. I've had lots of accolades. I've won awards, but I've never got what I really, really want, which is a song, a big song in a film. And at 74, that's still my goal, and I kind of don't know how to do it.
Booked on Rock Podcast. We'll be back after this.
Come out wherever you are.
Hello, it is Ryan, and we could all use an extra bright spot in our day, couldn't we? Just to make up for things like sitting in traffic, doing the dishes, counting your steps, all the mundane stuff. That is why I'm such a big fan of Chumba Casino. Chumba Casino has all your favorite social casino-style games that you can play for free anytime, anywhere with daily bonuses. So sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com. That's ChumbaCasino.com.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
Barry Greenfield is the author of My Journey to Blue Sky. You toured with my favorite blues artist, John Lee Hooker. This was in 1972 when your single New York is Closed Tonight was atop the charts. Yeah. You played 13 co-headlining shows with him. Tell me about the story about after the shows, because he went through some rough times, as many of the artists did. A lot of these black artists, the blues artists, Chuck Berry, famously known for getting ripped off by promoters. As a result, there was something that he would have you do after each show in his hotel room.
When I first met John, he very quiet, not sure. But by the 3rd day or the 2nd day, he knew he could trust Barry. So he insisted that we travel together. He was the king, and he insisted that we stayed on the same floor. So every night he got paid in cash, because you don't pay John Lee Hooker by check. You don't promise you're going to pay John Lee Hooker. You pay him by cash. I got paid at the end of the tour, and I got paid in full. I was not ripped off. I didn't get paid at the end of the tour. I got a per diem every day, just like John and the band did. But he allowed them to pay him after the gig. So he was paid, his individual share was cash. And I don't want to say the amount because I'm not 100% sure, but I think it was $1,000 a night, but I'm not really sure. And a lot of it was in ones. So we'd sit on his bed. I'm not sure if he could count. I've never really understood how well he read, or if he could count to 1,000. I wasn't really sure. And I had to do it in front of him. 1, 2, 10, 20, 30, 60, 140, 180. And I had to do it slowly. And this happened 13 states, 13 times. He was never ripped off by a dollar. And he seemed to really appreciate that. And he let me into his life. He was only one step from slavery, his parents. I mean, he lived the real blues, and he might be your favorite blues artist. The guy is 100% pure. When he hits his guitar, it's like watching no one else hit the guitar. He's not a flamboyant player. He's not B.B. King. He sort of rambles. And it's just, I watched him every night and loved it, Eric. Hendrix had a great line, which I've always stolen. There's only 2 kinds of music, Barry: good music and bad music. So it can be blues, it can be reggae, it can be folk, it can be classical, it can be Baroque. See, the good or it's bad.
It's what he could do with one chord.
One chord.
Is what you mentioned in that book. Yeah. It's been imitated but never matched.
Natural E. He'd sit on the chair, the same kind of chair I'm sitting on today, a hard chair, and he'd look at the audience with his hat on and he growled. He didn't really talk. And he knew how to set the amp. And it was pure and it was real. And it was true. As New York's Closed says, it's real, it's true. New York is closed tonight. It's real, it's true. It's John Lee Hooker.
You write, quote, "A producer is one of the key elements in the recording process. That role can add or subtract. I learned that lesson in Stockport in 1970 with 10cc. Tell us about that.
Well, that was a story where the producers failed. I have stories where producers succeeded, but the 10cc one failed. I flew back to England after the Apple story a year later to see if I was dreaming. I didn't go to London. I went to Manchester. And I thought it would be easier to find publishers in Manchester, less competitive. Manchester is now the second city in England after London. Back then, it was just coming out of it was 1970. It was still struggling, like Liverpool. And I got on a bus to go to see publishers with my guitar, and the bus was empty upstairs except for one girl. And I walked up to the girl and I said, hello. She said, are you a musician? And I said, no. Same way I said to you, I'm a songwriter. Anyway, to cut a long story short, her boyfriend was Lol Cream. And Lol Cream was the rhythm guitar player in 10cc. But that band in those days was called Hot Legs. And they had a big hit called Neanderthal Man. And I was really impressed with Neanderthal Man, a very great, brave song. So she gave me Lol Cream's phone number. Now, that wouldn't happen in 2025, but this is 1970, where people were still kind and trusted each other, and you didn't have an agenda. So I phoned Lol, and Lol was cold, arrogant, cool, distracted, didn't want to help. He said, that's not my job, phone my manager. And he gave me the manager's phone number. Now, the manager was Manchester's Brian Epstein. He managed Freddie and the Dreamers. He managed Herman's Hermits, went on to manage Tim Rice, Andrew Weber, 10cc, and others. And so I phoned this dude up, and he answers the phone, mind blown that I'm phoning him at home. And I said, hi, my name is Barry Greenfield. I'm from Vancouver, and Lol gave me your phone number. I'm a songwriter, and I'd like to play my songs to you and see what you think. Where are you? Well, I'm on Cedric Road at my Auntie Sadie's house. He said, well, you're 25-minute walk from where I live. So I left the poor part of Manchester, walked for 25 minutes to the rich part of Manchester, which really blew me away. I didn't know it existed that close, and into a very, very large house to meet Harvey Lisberg. Harvey Lisberg, I played half a song. He said, you sound like Cat Stevens. And I'd never heard of Cat Stevens. And I said, oh, and he said, hold on a sec. He picked up the phone and he phoned Graham Gouldman. And he said, Graham, I've got this kid from Canada here, and he's fabulous. Can you come by and listen to him? And Graham said, well, I'm on the way to the airport, but I'll stop in. So Graham loved what he heard, and he said to me, write a hit. So he went away for 10 days on holiday to Mallorca. I wrote Sweet America, which I think is one of my best songs. And he came back, and we went in the studio at 10cc, and they just didn't really listen to me. They didn't really connect with me. They were smoking. They were lazy. We made a record. The A-side, Sweet America, was okay. And the B-side was disaster. And I was devastated that they tried so little. And it wasn't that they weren't talented. It's just that they didn't care. So the record was released, and lo and behold, this crappy record became the BBC Record of the Week, the most played song in England that week. The week before it was Another Day by Paul McCartney. The week after it was Ticket to Ride by the Carpenters. So that shows you how lucky I was to get that slot. Now, how much Harvey's power had to do with that acceptance, we'll never know. But music business, as Libby DeVito so wisely told us, is not honorable. It's not good. I didn't like it. I didn't like working with 10cc. I loved Graham. He's my friend to this day. I think he's a very talented man, obviously. But they wanted me to sing, and here we go again. So I flew back to Vancouver, and the song faded away.
Booked on Rock Podcast. We'll be back after this.
Short pause. Hold your breath for the dynamic duo.
Ryan Seacrest here. When you have a busy schedule, it's important to maximize your downtime. One of the best ways to do that is by going to ChumbaCasino.com. Chumba Casino has all your favorite social casino games like spin slots, bingo, and solitaire that you can play for free for a chance to redeem some serious prizes. So hop on to ChumbaCasino.com now and live the Chumba life. Sponsored by Chumba Casino.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
Blue Sky, the album. Let's talk about that now. You recorded that at RCA Studios in Hollywood in 1973. You work with some world-class musicians, including guitarist Larry Carlton, who's famous for working with Steely Dan, bassist Joe Osborne, and drummer Jim Gordon, who is on so many legendary recordings and co-wrote Layla from Derek and the Dominoes, and his name comes up so often, and I'm not surprised because he did so much work. Tragically, his life took a dark turn. Joel Selvin wrote a fantastic book on him called Drums and Demons. I had him on. An amazing drummer. You worked with him. The production was overseen by David Kirschenbaum, who went on to work with Duran Duran, Tracy Chapman, Joe Jackson, Laura Branigan, Cat Stevens, Bryan Adams, Supertramp, Elkie Brooks, Tori Amos, and more. So tell us about that experience and seeing your songs come alive.
I'll add one name to that Kirschenbaum list, and that's Bob Dylan.
Oh, yes.
I got the number one record in Canada, New York is Closed Tonight, all because of Fred Allett. And it broke all kinds of records. So Fred parlayed that into a deal with RCA. And RCA gave us a $20,000 US advance. I got 10, Fred got 10, and a chance to make an LP in Los Angeles. And I said, F it, I'm going to do it. If 10cc think I can do it, if John Lennon thinks I can do it, who's Barry Greenfield to say I shouldn't? What's the worst that can happen? It's not my money, it's their money. So they treated me like gold. They flew me down to Los Angeles. They had a black limousine waiting for me with my name as I got out of the car, out of the plane, Barry Greenfield. I couldn't believe it. I was ready to get the bus. And I go in the limousine, and the next day I'm sitting in RCA interviewing producers to produce my LP. There was 3 guys that they brought for me to interview. One of them was Paul Rothchild, who did The Doors. And I absolutely love The Doors, especially LA Woman, Paul Rothchild's best piece of work, because he used a real bass player, not the left hand of Nazareth. Didn't like him. I thought he was there for the paycheck. I didn't think he really wanted to know about my songwriting. Didn't seem right. The second guy, I can't remember, but the old man, the second guy, he was really, really famous, but to tell you the truth, I can't remember who it was. Didn't mean anything to me. Didn't feel a connection. And then walks David Kirschenbaum. David Kirschenbaum was the bottom of the totem pole. And if David was sitting here, he'd laugh because it's true. Because David and I still talk, and David said, I'm the one that gave him the break. He had done nothing. He had never produced a record. And I picked him because he sold himself to me, just like you. He's real. I only like real. I don't really care about credits. I just like real. So I said, I want this guy to do it. So they believed in him, and they gave him what's called double scale. So most people that get to make a record don't get double scale. They get single scale, and they get really good guitar players, really good drummers. But with double scale, you get Larry Carlton, Jim Gordon, Joe Osborne, Larry Mahobrat from Frank Sinatra. And because you're an RCA, when you phone Larry Carlton, he'll take you seriously and say yes, because he must turn down 10 for what each one he accepts. So the key to the success of Blue Sky, and Blue Sky is a good record to this day, is all these components, but there's one I really have to bring to the fore that wasn't a producer, and that's the arranger. And the arranger for this album was Jimmy Haskell. And Jimmy Haskell did The Magnificent Seven, did Moon River. He was the guy from the 50s and 60s that did lots of really, really great records and won Oscars and Grammys. So this is how RCA do it. They phone Jimmy Haskell up and they say, we want you to arrange Barry's music. Can he stay with you? Jimmy says, sure. I go to Jimmy's house, and for 3 days I live in Jimmy's house, and we spend 12 hours a day for 3 days doing the 12 songs for Blue Sky. And I can't write a note of music. What do you want, Barry? He's on electric piano. I'm on acoustic. I like that. I don't like that. I want this, want that. So he improved them, just like Kirschenbaum improved them. And not with a small eye, with a medium to a large eye. He made them better. So we go in the studio, and I don't know who these guys are. I don't know the names, Larry Carlton, Jim Gordon, but there's a circle. And apart from Jim Gordon, and the other drummer we use is Russ Kunkel. We use Russ Kunkel for the slow ones, he was from Carole King and James Taylor, and Jim Gordon for the rock ones. He's from Derek and the Dominoes and other great bands with Volume. And he's behind a petition to keep the drum sounds. And they're in a circle around me, and I don't have a guitar, and they've got their sheet music on, and I sing. As I sing the song to these musicians, Larry Carlton asked me to play him the song the way I play it. He then copies the way I play it, but makes it 50 times better, but still the way I play it, but better. and he's got a caravan of guitars, 50 guitars, 70 guitars, and a guitar tech. And by the time we finished the first song, I couldn't believe it. Like, like the sum of the pie is equal to the ingredients of the pie. So if you have organic blueberries and really good cane sugar and nice dough, you're going to get a better blueberry pie than if you go to Costco. So that's what I had. I didn't have Costco. I had Harrods. I had the best department store in my room working. And without going into the arrogant side of town, because I don't want to, because I don't like it, they liked me. So for 3 weeks, we worked 9 hours, 8 hours a day. And then they look forward to coming to work. And they look forward to making Blue Sky better because their name was on it. And they weren't there for the money. And Larry Carlton became my friend. And Larry Carlton became my route to these other guys. Because I couldn't really talk to Joe Osborne. Joe Osborne was reclusive. He's from the Wrecking Crew. He was quiet. Didn't really talk. So Larry could say, in Section A, Joe, and Jimmy Haskell would do this too, in Section A, bar 32, treble it a bit, or hold it longer, or come in a bit later. And I didn't know what they were talking about. I just did my best to try and sing to these arrangements. And I did a rough vocal when they played the band track. And then I did the lead vocal when they all left. And I sat by myself. And another thing I should add, because it's important, is I was in Elvis's studio, Studio B at RCA Hollywood. And my engineers were Elvis's engineers.
Wow.
So whether they did Suspicious Minds or not, I don't know, but they were Elvis's boys. And I said to Rick Ruggieri, I said, Rick, again, please don't take this the wrong way. They liked me. I said, Rick, where did Elvis stand? And he said, Elvis always stood here. And I said, Rick, I want to stand there.
Yeah.
I stood in Elvis's, did the same thing in Nashville where Dylan stood. I stood where Elvis stood. Maybe it's not important. It probably isn't important, but it was to me. And I had the microphone, didn't use Elvis's mic, I don't think, because my voice is different. I'm not comparing myself to the king. Please don't think that. But I did as much to get the lighting like Elvis liked it, which I did, and stood in the same spot. And he said to me, Elvis never overdubbed. Elvis did everything in one take. So if he made a mistake or didn't like it, he didn't like the Beatles, bar 27, cut. George Martin was cut. Today it's insane. You do it on notes. It's ridiculous. We did it all in one take. So all the vocals that you hear on Blue Sky, the lead vocals, are one take, because that's how Elvis did it. And the album is magic. It just had its 50th anniversary. It was never released, the album. That's another thing we should say. Terrible. Maybe it's the best thing that ever happened to me. Maybe it's the worst thing. You decide, Eric. But my manager, Fred blah blah Allett, phoned David Kirschenbaum, or maybe phoned Don Bergheim, the president of RCA, probably, and said something. And I don't know what it was, but I think it was he wanted a whole bunch of money up front. That's my only guess. I don't know if that's true. And Don Bergheim, the president of RCA, went to David and said, phone Barry and tell Barry we're not dealing with this guy. We're not doing it. Tell Barry he's got to leave him, and we'll give him the lawyers, and we'll sever him, and we'll get him a manager, and we'll release Blue Sky, and we'll do a second album. David phoned me up at home. I lived in an $80 a month basement suite, one room with a bed and a sink, toilet. And I picked Fred Allett over David Kirschenbaum because Fred Allett published Burt Bacharach and Hal David, and I had mononucleosis when I made the decision. And I have learned something from my beautiful wife, Lori, and that is, it's meant to be the way it's meant to be. So do I have regrets about leaving Apple? No. Do I have regrets about leaving 10cc? No. Do I have regrets about leaving David Kirschenbaum? Absolutely. I think it was the wrong decision. I should have stayed with RCA. So wind the clock ahead. The record was never released. The only ones you can get are on Discogs and,
Now it's on Spotify.
Yes.
The deluxe edition.
I put it out.
You
I
put it out.
remastered it. I got control of it from RCA. They don't want anything to do with it. They don't even remember me. And I remastered it. I added a lot of demos, including the one I did with Apple, with This New Girl. And I put it out, and it's doing well. It was just, what's the word? When they put you in a Hall of Fame wing of the Canadian Museum of Music, and it was described as one of the most outstanding Canadian LPs ever recorded.
It's beautiful. And one of my favorite tracks is the first one. It starts right away with On the Road to Safety, which I love.
You know, brother, can I tell you the story about that song?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay.
By the way, I'm going to put a link to the whole album in the show notes so people can link.
Thank you, Eric. And
I'd
like people to listen to it because it's a 70s record analog with the greatest musicians in the world. I mean, you listen to Larry Carlton's work in Steely Dan and everybody else, the Crusaders. Listen to his work on my stuff. It's on New York's Close Tonight, the minute and a half tag with Larry's solo, to me, is worth the price of admission. So David Kirschenbaum plays me On the Road to Shambhala, the song that Three Dog Night recorded, written by B.W. Stevenson. And he said, I'd like to put this song on the record. And I said, David, I don't understand what it's about. And Shambhala, I think, means Nirvana, On the Road to Blue Sky. I could have called my book On the Road to Shambhala now that I think about it. And he said, well, can you write a song as good as this? And I said, let me see. So I went back to the hotel that night, came back with On the Road to Safety. And it's the one song that I felt was rushed in my writing. I recorded it, didn't think much of it, had nothing to do with the song order. But how many times have I heard what Eric said? Right. My favorite track on that album is On the Road to Safety.
It may be my favorite.
Well, many people say that, many people. And what they say about it is Russ Kunkel's drum intro just gets them, and the tempo. And it's a fun song. And it's about, I swear I've got it beaten. I know I've got it beaten. I know I'm on the road to safety, because his heart is broken. And I love songs where the guy lies to himself. I'm okay now. I'm on the road to safety. Tempted by the fruit of another is another really clever song. And I was listening to one the other day where it was Blondie's song with the reggae song on Tide is High.
Tide is High, yeah.
Yeah, like you're lying to yourself, I'm number one, I'm going to be number one. You know that you're never going to be, but you write a song as if you're going to be because it might make it come true. And that's On the Road to Safety. This poor dude singing this song has a broken heart, but he's on the road to safety. He's not. He's heading down this tunnel like we all do when you're 18, 19, or 53 or 26 and your heart's broken, be male or female. The song that I really like on that record is one that might be dated. I'd like your opinion on it. Okay. And that's Free the Lady.
Which one? Oh, Free the Lady, track 2. Yes, I like that very much. That's the follow-up to On the Road to Safety. That follows it. Yes.
I think that's that electric piano solo in there by Larry Mahobrak was all done in one take. Free the Lady to me is about my mom. Not that my dad was bad to my mom with a capital B, but he wasn't a good husband. He wasn't attentive, didn't really listen. A lot of things that a lot of husbands get accused of doing. And I wrote that song for my mom. And when I played it for my mom, she cried. I was 18. Took it to Kirschenbaum, took it to the arranger, Jimmy Haskell. I said I wanted a long solo in it. They let me do whatever I wanted to do. They made it 6 minutes long, 7 minutes long. And we started to record it, and I was starting to do the vocal when the president, Don Berkheimer, who was vice president of RCA, became president, walked in with pizza. He walked in with 3 or 4 boxes of pizza for the band. I wouldn't eat because I'm singing. And he said, I'm only staying for 5 minutes, boys. He stayed for 3 hours because of Free the Lady. It took me that long to do the vocal until I got the take I liked and the harmonies. I'll never forget the president of RCA saying he really liked it. Every song on that album is a part of my soul.
And just to give listeners an idea of just how successful this album was right off the bat and could have been, it reached number 54 with a bullet on Billboard. In the U.S. market, RCA released the single Sweet America. And in the first week, number 54.
Headed for number 1, they said.
Headed for number 1.
That's what they told me. whether that's talk or not. It was 54 with the Bullet. I think it's good. I don't know if it's rare. I mean, the Beatles went number 5 with the Bullet, but I'm not the Beatles. So I was a new artist, and it was being played right across America.
Yeah, as a new artist, 54 is
Yeah.
really good.
Okay, thank you.
I mean, it's not like you had the cachet behind you that people knew who you were, so the music spoke for itself.
Again, Larry Carlton, Jim Gordon, Jimmy Haskell. So the song was about America. It was about Vietnam. And it had this line, sweet America, sing about America, then fall down on your knees and cry. I love Americans. I have many American friends. I've recorded in America. I've done business in America. But I'm not a fan of the gun. I'm not a fan of intolerance. I'm not a fan of racism. So the line of the song is fall down on your knees and cry. Whether that was the key line to making the song get accepted to 54 with a Bullet or its anchor, we'll never know. But the second week, when they told me they expect to go into the top 20s, John McCain and 111, 113 other Hanoi Hilton prisoners came back from Hanoi. And the song, because of the line, fall down on your knees and cry, was pulled from American radio coast to coast. Kirschenbaum, Don Berkheimer, freaked out, flew me to Los Angeles the next day. I spent 2 days on the telephone speaking to radio programmers. I know you know radio programmers, saying, hey, it's not an anti-American song. We don't care, Barry. We're not playing anything like that. We've got John McCain back. We're not doing this. Once again, is Laurie right? It's meant to be the way it's meant to be. And then Fred Allen made his claim. I want this, I want that, I want this. I want Barry gets this, Barry gets that, I get this. They said, F you, and I walked away. Here I am 50 years later, as happy as can be with my life, but wondering, would I have had, the album is, I had dinner the other night with friends who talked about Piano Man. And Piano Man album, in some ways, is Billy Joel's best work. Maybe The Stranger is equal. But would Blue Sky have been Baker Street? Would Blue Sky have been Piano Man? This was before James Taylor. It was before Cat Stevens. It was before Carole King. Would it have become a singer-songwriter record? I don't know. And you'll never know. And you can say, oh, it's really good. And it could have. But there's so many variables. But the one thing you can't deny is 54 with a Bullet. And RCA believed it. And they tried it with Emmett Rhodes. They tried it with B.W. Stevenson after me. And they kept on trying it. And they never quite got it.
Yeah. I wonder if they followed a second single On the Road to Safety.
Yes.
If that was a follow-up, right?
Fred Allen, you have a glass of water. You put a drop of mud in that glass of water. You can't drink it. And that's what Fred Allen did. He got greedy. Business is cutthroat.
But it happens so many times. Your story is so familiar. A lot of things have to line up just so.
Yeah, and I don't regret. I mean, I regret not knowing what would have happened, but it could have gone either way, Eric. I mean, it could have gone the way of Badfinger with 2 suicides.
Exactly.
I'm a very fragile guy. I'm not like I think Springsteen is a really, really tough guy. I think John Lennon was very, very soft. And I think he struggled, with fame. Help, I need somebody. Help, please help me. McCartney is cool. He water off a duck's back to McCartney. Say anything you want about him. Laugh at his 80s records. He doesn't care. Laugh at Press to Play. He doesn't care.
Yeah, I totally understand. I'm the same way. I tread carefully with everything that I do because it's very easy to trigger. I think maybe the creative people I find we have these active imaginations, and it could take us down some it could take you to some great places creatively, but it could take you down a dark turn if you can overthink things, and it could take a while to get back on track. And I think that's with a lot of these fame when you're younger seems great. Fame and fortune, that seems great, but there's a lot of pressure.
Yeah. Look at Oasis. I mean, so they've got 50 million quid in the bank. So what? He lost his brother, and now they're putting this mega tour together. I mean, I'd love to have dinner with Janice Ian. I'd like to know what happened she wrote a song called After 17, and then poof. Now, was it because she was gay? I don't think so. but it happened with Damn, I Wish I Was Your Lover. It's a very, very cruel business.
Booked on Rock Podcast. We'll be back after this.
Hello, it is Ryan, and I was on a flight the other day playing one of my favorite social spin slot games on ChumbaCasino.com. I looked over at the person sitting next to me, and you know what they were doing? They were also playing Chumba Casino. Everybody's loving having fun with it. Chumba Casino is home to hundreds of casino-style games that you can play for free anytime, anywhere. So sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com to claim your free welcome bonus. That's ChumbaCasino.com and live the Chumba life.
Sponsored by Chumba Casino. No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
Hey guys, thanks so much for checking out the Booked on Rock podcast. If you've just found the podcast, welcome. If you've been listening, thank you so much for your support. And make sure you tell a friend, a family member, share on social media, and let people know about Booked on Rock. And if you do like the podcast, make sure you subscribe, give a 5-star review wherever you listen to the Booked on Rock podcast. We're on Amazon, Apple, iHeart, Spotify, Spreaker, TuneIn, and on YouTube Music. You can check out the full episodes on video, along with video highlights from episodes on the Booked on Rock YouTube channel. Find it at Booked on Rock. Thanks again for listening. Now back to the show.
Harry Nilsson. I printed off the Harry Nilsson. It'll take me 3 minutes to read it. If you want me to read it?
Well, that was my next question. Because
to make it a bit different, I could read what I wrote.
Sure. I recently,
okay with you?
Yeah, and I recently interviewed Fred Mullen, and I think you did hear that episode, or at least that clip.
Absolutely.
Yeah, producer composer Fred Mullen. In his book, he wrote about an encounter with Harry Nilsson. Did not go well. Nilsson in the throes of his addiction, and was pretty nasty to him. You have a Harry Nilsson story in the book. He was great to you. You met him in Ringo Starr.
Very nice to me. And what year was Mullen's connection?
That would have been, I want to say that's 79, 80, 81, maybe around that period.
Okay, so that's 6 years after mine. And in my story, he's also abusing. So, but what a talent. I mean,
oh my God.
There's a story, an untold story. So
Jim Gordon was on his album too.
Yeah.
And his drumming on,
was it Jump Into the Fire?
Oh, Jump Into the Fire. He ends that song. It's jaw dropping.
Jim Gordon is sitting on his drum kit. There's lines of coke on Larry Nechtol's piano. And Larry Knechtel is the guy from Bread. He's the guy that played the guitar solo in Guitar Man. Larry Knechtel is the guy that played piano to Paul Simon and Garfunkel's Bridge Over Troubled Waters, and is angry to this day that he didn't get arranging credit or part of the Grammy, because Larry Knechtel was a genius. They had coke on the piano, the grand piano. And the only ones that did the coke was Jim Gordon and Larry Knechtel. So Jim Gordon goes over there, does a line or two, and says, "You want one?" And I said, "Absolutely not." And he points to his watch. It's obviously a Rolex or something of that ilk. I don't know. And he said, "Hey, Barry, Layla bought me this watch." And I said, "Pardon?" And he said what you just said. He wrote the piano part to Layla. I mean, listen to how beautiful that is.
Yeah.
That piano part to Layla, whether it had much to do with the success of Layla, I've always wondered, but it sure didn't hurt. It's beautiful.
There's a chapter in that book by Joel Selvin when he's in jail, prison jail, whatever it was, where after he murdered his mother. It's just terrible to even say it out loud, just to think of that. But he's in jail, and they're in the music room, and he sits down and starts playing the Layla piano part. These inmates are looking like, "Oh my God, this is Jim Gordon," you know?
He was just huge.
Surreal.
I'm not sure if he was 6'8" or 6'4" or 6'6". He was a huge man.
Big guy.
But he listened to me like they all did. He was so kind.
That's what's sad. Yeah. If he had wrestled those demons, had the right help, it would have turned out differently, I think.
Money, fame. If your listeners do go to your link and play Blue Sky on Spotify, I don't have a favorite baby in the album, but New York is Closed Tonight has an incredible drum part by Jim Gordon, top to tail, and an incredible guitar solo at the end by Larry Carlton, and probably my best vocal, and worth a listen. So is it okay if I read this?
Please do. Yeah. This is the Harry Nilsson story, right?
Yeah, this is the meat and potatoes of it. So I'm sitting in the studio. I walk into the studio, Blue Sky, and there's signs all over the RCA building. Welcome Ringo, welcome Ringo. So I run into Studio B and I say to Kirschenbaum, what's going on? What's going on? Ringo. Well, Harry Nilsson's in A, We're in B, and Ringo's coming to visit. So that's how the story starts. So we're all waiting for Ringo. So it's 11:30 a.m. and nature called. So upon walking into the toilet, I find that I was not alone. Harry Nilsson was sitting on a black leather stool next to the shelf that ran below the mirror. He was smiling at me. Well, I'm a shy guy, and I froze. In his right hand, he held a small silver spoon. In his left, a small plastic bag with powder in it. Well, that really freaked Barry out. I had never been in the company of a criminal drug, and I'm not the bravest of dudes, and I may be naive, but I knew from watching the movie Serpico that that bag was not talcum powder, it was cocaine. And the small silver spoon was my confirmation. Music Industry Reality 101. Hi, said Harry. Hello, I replied. I'm Harry. Who are you? Do you want some? A groupie laid it on me outside the building. No thanks, but thanks. I'd better answer, I thought. I'm Barry Greenfield. I'm working in Studio B, I stuttered. It's always weird when two men chat in a bathroom. We both know that we were there to relieve ourselves. Harry had different motives. Someone can walk in, but it can still offer a certain privacy. Sometimes a brief, warm couple of sentences happen. So I relieved myself. Then he filled his silver spoon and he did it. Once on the left, once on the right. I washed my hands. I was not relaxed. Harry wanted to talk. So me and Nilsson chatted for 10 minutes. It seemed unimportant that we were in a small corporate men's washroom. He looked just like Harry. He sounded just like Harry. He was kind, friendly, open, and normal. I relaxed more. Things concluded with Harry saying, if you have time, come into A and help me with the mix. He was gone. Help him with the mix? I ran back to B, shared my story. Kirschenbaum listened to my tale and quickly, emphatically said, go, 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 go. We'll finish the accordion without you. We're doing an accordion part on Jack and Jill. Don't pass up such an opportunity, Barry. So I went to A and I did not waffle. I knocked on the door of A like you do on a neighbor's front door. I walked in. He invited me to sit in a large leather mixed chair to his left. We spent 2 hours working on a Harry track. I played with the gain, the EQ, the auxiliary sends, the pan, the volume, the reverb levels. I learned a great deal that day from Harry, 2 hours full of classroom. It was amazing hearing the great sounds pop out of the huge speakers in A. He was an extremely talented player. He used extremely talented players on the track. Harry told me he recorded the song in London and was joined by Klaus Voormann, Ringo, Peter Frampton, and George Harrison, who played the cowbell. The names he dropped made me shiver. I requested to hear the cowbell part isolated. George Harrison. Harry laughed and gave me 10 seconds. He would occasionally refresh his nose, but never seemed out of control. Time flew by. I grew more at ease until the world's axis reversed on its spin. At 2 p.m., the door swung open, and the magic of that Thursday was about to dissolve in a nanosecond. In walked Ringo Starr and Richard Perry, Harry and Ringo's record producer back in the day. Ringo had a bottle of Jack Daniels, half full in his left hand. He passed to Harry, he took a chug, then to Richard Perry, he chugged too. I was not included. No one thought to offer the kid a chug. I rose from my honored seat left of Harry and went to the chair behind. The original seat sat empty. Ringo and Richard stood. Harry was thrilled at the arrival of his mates. It was so lovely to see and feel. They chatted about the confusion in the RCA parking lot, but I was ignored. I felt like the invisible man. I was quiet, ignored, uneasy. At long last, Harry turned to me and said, Richard Starkey, this is Barry Greenberg. I did not correct Harry's error. He repeated the same intro of Richard Perry. Barry Greenberg, I was. Richard smiled and shook my hand. Ringo smiled and shook my hand. And that's where I'll stop. They were both bigger than life, but I read somewhere where Eric Clapton told a similar tale about he was known as God with a small G in London back when he was Cream and the Blues Breakers. And wherever he went, he was like in awe, put in awe by people. But when he went there with George Harrison, which he did a lot, he too became invisible. Because when there's a Beatle in the room, I don't know how they live with it. They live with it since 63, 64. Everybody changes. He's still Ringo, he's still Paul, he's still George, but you're not. You're in the company of a Beatle. And that's what happened when Ringo walked in. Everything changed. You could literally feel the molecules change.
They seem, him and Paul, all these years later, they do seem very, all things considered, being one half of the greatest band of all time, pretty damn humble.
Absolutely.
I mean, I don't know how they are able to remain connected with mankind the way they are able to. It's just because they are royalty and they're still going strong.
And I don't know if it was 20 or 25 years ago that Ringo put down the bottle. When he walked into Studio A that day, he had Jack Daniels half drunk and he did coke. And maybe Ringo is great today because 25, 30 years ago, he went to AA, my song Invisible Baggage. And maybe that allows Ringo to be Richard.
And it sounds like you're able to say no often.
Yeah,
that was all around you, the temptation.
Never, I'm a very timid man. I was at Rod Stewart's, dropping names, I was at Rod Stewart's house for a party. And I thought, I'm at Rod Stewart's house for a party. I'm going to drink the brandy that he drinks. I always forget the name of it, but very expensive brandy. There's lots of booze and all kinds of things there. And I got really, really drunk and realized it's not for me. I'm not good with alcohol and drugs. I like being Barry. I have my problems, but those are not. And I have a deal with my daughter and my wife that when I do a concert and it's not as good as, not better than the concert before, I stop singing. And I did a concert 2 weeks ago and it's the best one I've ever done. I'm doing another one in October. I only do 2 a year. And it's enough for me. My voice has not lost a lot of its timbre. It's gone deeper, of course, because age does that. But I think that Paul McCartney has every right to do whatever he wants to do at 83, 84. And if he wants to do 3-hour shows, and I've seen 6 of them, God bless him. My wife cried when McCartney came on stage. It was so emotional to be in the same room and listen to Band on the Run and Lady Madonna and the great songs of his catalog. When we lose Dylan and McCartney, those are the big two. When we will lose them, another one bites the dust. Be a different planet for me.
Booked on Rock Podcast. We'll be back after this.
I mean, there's like no way that we can just pause for a minute. You guys just go home and do your stuff, and then tomorrow we can just like continue.
Hello, it is Ryan, and I was on a flight the other day playing one of my favorite social spin slot games on ChumbaCasino.com. I looked over the person sitting next to me, and you know what they were doing? They were also playing Chumba Casino. Everybody's loving having fun with it. Chumba Casino is home to hundreds of casino-style games that you can play for free anytime, anywhere. So sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com to claim your free welcome bonus. That's ChumbaCasino.com and live the Chumba life.
Sponsored by Chumba Casino.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
Find the Booked on Rock website at bookedonrock.com. There you can find all the back episodes of the show, the latest episode in video and audio, plus a video highlight and a link to our YouTube channel. Links to all of the platforms where you can listen to the podcast, plus all the social media platforms. We're on Blue Sky, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and X. Also, check out the Booked on Rock blog, find your local independent bookstore, find out all the latest hot rock book releases, and before you go, check out the Booked on Rock online store. Pick up some Booked on Rock merch. It's all at bookedonrock.com. Okay, one last story. I have to ask you about Thanksgiving dinner with Mike Nesmith of the Monkees and what was on Nesmith's tray of Thanksgiving treats that took you by surprise. We will finish with this story.
Another wonderful guy. I was invited to his house for Thanksgiving dinner. I think it was 1968 Thanksgiving. And he was in the Monkees, sort of. The TV show was over, but they still toured. So I go to his house and we drive up the driveway and there's a big sign by his mansion, do not leave car unattended. And there's a German shepherd running around the car barking that was bigger than a building. Mike comes out, and this is the part of the story that must be shared. He was wearing his green monkey toque on Thanksgiving Day. that's just something I've never asked him. He took it off after a while, but he wore it when he greeted us. And he spoke to the dog in German, and the dog sat down, and we got out of the car. And we had dinner, and I thought it was his wife, but it wasn't. It was his living girlfriend, Joanne. He wrote that great song. Her name was Joanne. Beautiful song, his best song. And we had dinner, which was turkey and broccoli and pumpkin pie and very nice. America everywhere. America, salt and pepper shakers with red, white, and blue stripes. Everything was nice. And then Mike was drinking wine and beer, and my friend Pete, who drove me there, he was a DJ in America, was drinking wine and beer, and I was drinking tea and coffee. And then we go into the living room, and in walks Joanne with a proper English tray, a wide one where you hold the handles like this, where you put the teapot, the cup, and the cookies. If you go for English tea, but there was no tea on the tray, and there was no cups, there's no sources. There was like lines of pills, different color pills, and a hash pipe, and a chunk of hash, and I don't know, 8, I can't remember, 10 pills, maybe 6 of each, maybe more, but lined up like by someone who's like ADD, like they have to do it properly,
Right.
in the right space. I noticed all that shit. And he put it down, and Mike said in his quote, "It's time for dessert, gentlemen." Well, Pete said, no, not for me. I'll just stick to beer. And I said, "Could I have another cup of coffee, please?" Another cup of coffee. And they lit the pipe. And even though I didn't smoke pot or hash back then, I just always loved the smell. It was never like an offensive smell to me. So the
I hear
room,
you. I'm the same way. Yeah.
room just filled with smell. And I learned later, but I'm sure it's true that night, that you get contact highs. So I was high, and there was a lot of hash smoke. They get filling the pipe, and then they take a pink pill, and they discuss it. It was so weird. And I describe it in the book, I think, like 2 Italian chefs or something, a Portuguese chef. Well, if we take, and they knew the names, if we take, I'm making these names up. If we take andropline and melaline and wait 10 minutes and then take a duladada, it should be great.
Oh, Mike.
She takes an andropline and melaline, and then 10 minutes later, this ADD lady takes the doodle. But they never really got stupid. They just were normally, I guess, stoned. And he was so nice. And so they did a lot of drugs. I didn't do any. They did a lot of drugs. And then Mike brings out 2 guitars, and he said, "Play me something." So I played him New York's Close Tonight. And he played me different drum. And he played me Joanne. And he played me some Monkees songs. And it went on for an hour and a half. Then I taught him I remember I taught him how to Play with Fire, the Stone song. E minor, D, C, F. He was really happy to learn that. And then Peter fell asleep on the couch. I guess he passed out. Joanne disappeared hours earlier. She was gone on her own private high, tired of talking about the Beatles and the Kinks and the Stones and the Hollies and the Foremost. And me and Mike went out to the pool, and we were dressed in our clothes. We weren't going swimming. It was 11 o'clock. And he had 2 speaker chairs in there. And Eric, have you ever been to see Love in Las Vegas?
No, never
Well,
seen
it's not there. It's not there anymore. But if it ever goes anywhere, it's beautiful. But it has a chair you sit in with a left speaker and a right speaker, and the music George Martin did for the Love mix comes through, blows your mind. I had my eyes closed. I didn't even watch Cirque du Soleil. I just listened to music most of the time. So he had these 2 speakers, and he was raving about Paperback Writer. And he played Paperback Writer, the single, over and over and over again through these 2 speakers, 20 times, 25 times. And he kept on raving about Paul McCartney's bass. And Paul McCartney's bass had been recorded differently for the very first time on Rain and Paperback Writer. It's done through an amplifier. And he kept on raving, and he kept on saying how shit the Monkees were, and how much he hated their music, and how he was going to go tomorrow to San Francisco and come back with 10 grand, and how he didn't deserve it. And I left at 2 a.m. after having the most pleasant evening with a very talented man. And my book is not a negative book. It's a pleasant read because I kept out, as best I could, I used the stories that brought joy to my heart and my life. And it's called My Journey to Blue Sky, not My Journey to Hell.
Exactly. And there are more stories in the book and the book is out now. You can find it wherever books are sold. Look for it at your nearest independent bookstore. If there's one nearby, you can find out if there is one at bookedonrock.com. And if it's not in your local bookstore, tell them to get a copy of it. And where can people find out more about your music, Barry, and all about anything else that you have coming up? Because you said you have some gigs lined up.
One gig in Vancouver. If you want to find out about Barry Greenfield, my daughter built me a fabulous website, barrygreenfieldmusic.com. Has a lot of stuff. I've got maybe 70 videos on YouTube. I love making videos to my songs, some of them with full bands, some of them go back as far as 1968, not the videos, but the music. The best place to start with Barry Greenfield is New York is Closed Tonight. Blue Sky is the best album I ever did because of the people on it. But there's a lot of songs like Invisible Baggage, 1, 2, 3. There's a really good song on YouTube called The Beautiful Band, my tribute to the Beatles, that I'm extremely proud of. And the other thing that I've done, if you're interested, is I spent a lot of time writing about Auschwitz. And I've written a musical documentary about Auschwitz that runs 33 minutes long. And if anybody wants a copy of that on YouTube, you have to come to me, Barry Greenfield at Shaw, shaw.ca. That's my email, Barry Greenfield at shaw.ca. Eric, this is the best one I've done, man.
Thank you, sir.
By 37 miles and 4 inches and half a centimeter.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for your support. You've become a listener, a regular listener now.
Absolutely.
From our email exchanges.
Never going to leave it, man.
And by the way, I want to get a photo. You sent me some photos, quite a few great photos. I want to make sure we get some of those up, including one of you and your wife, right? We want to give a shout out to your wife.
Lori is my best friend, my mentor, my teacher. She's a very great friend and wife. And I'd like to also mention my daughters, McCartney, Andrea, and Melissa, and my grandchild, Navy, and my soon-to-be-born grandchild, who at this point in time will remain nameless.
Okay.
Love you,
got
Eric.
a beautiful life. You got a beautiful life. Everything turned out perfectly.
Absolutely.
You,
I found blue sky, man, on my journey. And it's never about the destination. It's always about the journey.
Barry Greenfield, thanks so much.
God bless.
That's it. It's in the books.
Hello, it is Ryan, and we could all use an extra bright spot in our day, couldn't we? Just to make up for things like sitting in traffic, doing the dishes, counting your steps, all the mundane stuff. That is why I'm such a big fan of Chumba Casino. Chumba Casino has all your favorite social casino-style games that you can play for free anytime, anywhere with daily bonuses. So sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com. That's ChumbaCasino.com.